The ice-laced wind tore the words from his throat and hurled them at her like stones. You are weak, scentless, and a disgrace to this pack. By the power of the moon goddess who has clearly forsaken you, I, Alpha King Theron, banish you, Elara, from the kingdom of the Silver Claw. You will leave now and never return. Die in the tundra for all I care. You are nothing to me. He didn't just look at her. He looked through her. His silver eyes, once the color of her favorite sky, now as hard and cold as the glacier that loomed over their valley. She was freezing, clad only in the thin tunic she'd been dragged from her cot in, but the cold from his gaze was what truly stopped her heart. He was her mate. The fates had decreed it. The bond had snapped into place the moment he turned 18. A faint, humming thread that only she could feel. And he was casting her out, in front of the entire assembled kingdom, to die. Wait, before the next revelation unfolds, if this mystery has already captivated you, let us know where you're following this story from. To ensure you don't miss unexpected claims, broken bonds, or awakenings under the moon, subscribe and stay close. Now, back to the scene. Elara's knees buckled, but she refused to fall. Not here, not while he watched. The snow bit at her bare feet, an agony that barely registered. She looked past Theron, past the wall of elite guards with their shimmering gray pelts, to the crowd. Hundreds of wolves, her people, watched in silence. No one met her gaze. Not her childhood friends, not the Omega she shared meals with, not even her parents. Her mother was weeping silently into her hands, but her father's face was a mask of shame, his eyes fixed on the ground. Only one person defied the king. Her younger brother, Finn, just 14 and barely on the cusp of his own first shift, tried to surge forward. "No, Elara, you can't!" Two guards grabbed him, and his cry was cut short as one cuffed him across the face. That sound snapped the last thread of her hope. This was real. "Go," Theron commanded, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the snow. She turned. She didn't beg. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Her only possession, a small, threadbare satchel with a crust of bread and a waterskin, was tossed into the snowdrift at the edge of the great gates. A guard nudged it with his spear. "Take your pathetic scraps and be gone, scentless." Elara's shoulders ached with the effort of staying upright. She walked toward the satchel, her movements stiff. Every eye on the wall was a physical weight, pressing her down. She looped the strap over her shoulder and, without a backward glance, walked past the massive iron-bound gates of the citadel. They boomed shut behind her, the sound as final as a spadeful of dirt on a coffin. The wind howled, a mocking shriek in her ears, and swallowed her whole. She was 19 years old, and her life was over. The tundra was a vast white hell. Within an hour, the citadel was lost to the blizzard. Within 2, she couldn't feel her feet. The wind didn't just blow, it seemed to hunt her, clawing at her thin tunic, stealing every wisp of warmth. She was a disgrace, a scentless. In their world, your scent was your soul. It was your rank, your identity, your connection to the pack, and the goddess. Omegas had the gentle scent of milk and honey. Betas, the sturdy scent of pine and earth. Alphas, the commanding scent of ozone and steel. Elara smelled of nothing, just the cold air and the faint, human smell of fear. Her wolf had never manifested. At 16, when all others felt the fire of their first shift, she had felt only a hollow ache. The pack healers had prodded her, the elders had prayed over her, but nothing came. She was a void. And Theron, the strongest alpha king in a generation, had been cursed with her as a mate. The faint pull of the bond was a cruel joke. It was a wire connecting his vibrant soul to her empty one. She couldn't blame him for hating her. She hated herself. She stumbled over a fallen log, landing hard on her chest. The air rushed from her lungs in a painful gasp. The snow was deep here, soft, almost like a bed. It would be so easy to just stop, to close her eyes and let the whiteness take her. Finn's small, bloodied face flashed in her mind. She pushed herself up, her arms screaming in protest. She had to try, for him. He was the only one who didn't see her as a failure. She walked for hours, or maybe days. Time was a blur of white and gray. The crust of bread was long gone, the water in her skin frozen solid. Hunger was a cold knot in her belly, but it was the exhaustion that was truly killing her. She was shivering so violently she could barely stand. She found a small overhang of rock, barely a dent in the cliffside, and huddled beneath it. It offered little protection from the wind, but it was something. "So cold," she whispered, her teeth chattering. Her body was failing. She curled into a tight ball, tucking her hands between her knees. This was it. She would die here, alone, forgotten. A failure to her family, a burden to her pack, a disgrace to her mate. Mate. The word was ash in her mouth. She thought of Farron, his strong hands, the way his silver eyes would crinkle when he smiled, something she hadn't seen directed at her in years. A single, frozen tear cut a path down her numb cheek. Celine, she prayed to the goddess who had abandoned her. Why? She didn't expect an answer. She expected only the end. But as her vision dimmed, the swirling snow in front of her seemed to part. A shape emerged from the blizzard. It was massive. A wolf, larger than any she had ever seen. Bigger even than Theron in his alpha form. Its fur was the color of the blizzard itself, pure white. And its eyes glowed with a soft, silver light, like two full moons. It tilted its head, regarding her with an intelligence that was ancient and terrifying. It huffed, a cloud of steam enveloping her. It didn't smell of pine or steel. It smelled of starlight and eternity. Then the world went black. She woke to warmth. The sensation was so foreign it was shocking. She was lying on a bed of soft furs in a small, dry cave. A fire crackled in a shallow pit, its smoke vanishing up a natural flue in the rock. The air was rich with the smell of roasting meat and strange, sweet herbs. Her tunic was gone, replaced by a shift of finely cured, impossibly soft deerskin. Her feet were wrapped in bandages. She could feel them again, tingling with a dull, returning ache. "You are fortunate, child. Another hour, and not even the goddess could have called you back." Ilara sat up too quickly. The cave spun. A hand, surprisingly strong, pushed her gently back down. "Rest. Eat." An old woman sat by the fire, tending a rabbit on a spit. She was ancient, her face a road map of wrinkles, her white hair braided with leather cords and small animal bones. But her eyes were sharp and clear, the same piercing silver as the great wolf. Ilara stared. "Where? Who are you?" "I am Lyra," the woman said, not looking up from the fire. "And this is my home, or as nut a home as the wilderness allows." She pulled a piece of meat from the rabbit and offered it to Ilara on the point of a knife. "Eat." Ilara ate, the hot, juicy meat sending life flooding back into her. It was the best thing she had ever tasted. "The wolf," Ilara said between bites. "In the storm. Was that you?" Lyra chuckled. a dry, rattling sound. I am old, child, but not that old. My shifting days are long behind me. What you saw was a friend, a protector of this place. Ilara finished the meat, and Lyra gave her more. She ate until her stomach was full and warm. Why did you save me? I'm nothing. Nothing. Lyra finally turned to look at her, and her silver eyes seemed to pin Ilara to the furs. You think you are nothing because you are scentless? Because your wolf does not come when you call? I was banished, Ilara whispered, the shame returning. My own mate, the Alpha King, cast me out. Theron, Lyra spat the name. A fool, like his father before him. Arrogant, blind, and terrified of anything he does not understand. She poked the fire, sending sparks dancing. He thinks you are weak. He is wrong. But I am weak, Ilara insisted. I have no wolf. I have no scent. You have no pack scent, Lyra corrected, her voice dropping. You have no wolf scent, because what slumbers inside you is neither pack nor wolf. It is older, it is vaster, and it has kept your animal form dormant because it knows. Knows what? Ilara's heart was hammering. That if your wolf were to rise, it would be consumed by the fire you carry. You are not empty, child. You are latent. Lyra leaned closer, her ancient eyes holding a spark of something Ilara had never seen before. Reverence. You are a vessel, a direct descendant of the first, the one who walked among us when the moon was new. I don't understand. Selene, Lyra's voice cracked like a whip. The moon goddess. She took a mortal form once an eon ago. She loved a wolf, and she bore him a child. That line was thought lost, bred out, diluted into nothing. But it was not. It was waiting, and it has woken in you. Ilara stared at her, certain the old woman was mad. That's a pup's story, a legend. Is it? Lyra smiled, a thin, knowing expression. You survived a blizzard that should have killed you in an hour. You were found by a guardian wolf that has not shown itself to a two-leg in 1,000 years. You have no scent because the scent of the moon would drive other wolves mad. Your mate bond is faint because your true mate is not a wolf of pine and steel, but the very sky itself. You are not weak, Ilara. You are terrifying. And your ignorant, arrogant king cast out his only salvation. A cold dread, far deeper than the tundra's chill, settled over Ilara. Salvation from what? You haven't felt it? Lyra looked surprised. The sickness in the land? The shadows gathering at the edges of the world? The Morrigan. Ilara had heard the name. Whispers in the citadel. Shadow creatures, corrupted wolves who fed on fear. Theron had dismissed them as rogue splinter packs, common criminals. They are not rogues, Lyra said, her voice grim. They are the heralds of Malachor, the Shadow Alpha. He was one of the first, like Selena's mate, but he turned from the moon and embraced the void. He hunts those with divine blood. He hunts you. And he has been growing stronger as your power has been stirring. He knows about me? He knows a power is rising. He doesn't know where. He orchestrated the fear in your kingdom, the whispers of prophecy, the paranoia that gripped your king. Lyra stood, her small frame radiating an unexpected authority. There was a prophecy that a nothing wolf, a scentless omega, would be the kingdom's ruin or its salvation. Theron, in his fear, chose to see you as the ruin. He thought by casting you out, he was saving his people. He has, in fact, doomed them. Ilara's mind reeled. Theron, he hadn't banished her just for weakness. He had banished her out of fear. Fear of a prophecy. Fear of her? What, what do I do? Ilara asked, her voice trembling. You have a choice, Lyra said, turning back to the fire. You can stay here, and I will teach you to hide. The shadows will eventually find you, and you will die. Or you can learn. You can travel with me to the moon's heart, the peak where Selene first touched the earth. There, you can complete the ritual. You can awaken what is inside you. You can become what you were born to be. And if I do, then you will have the power to face Malachor. You will have the power to save the fools who cast you out. Ilara looked at her bandaged feet. She thought of Finn's face, bruised for her sake. She thought of her mother's weak tears and her father's shame. And she thought of Theron, his silver eyes cold with certainty as he condemned her. He banished me. They turned their backs. Why should I save them? You shouldn't, Lyra said softly. Not for them. You should do it for yourself. You should do it because the alternative is to let the darkness win. Ilara was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled, the wind howled outside, but in the cave it was warm. Finally, she met the old woman's gaze. Teach me how to be strong. The next 5 years were a blur of pain, exhaustion, and discovery. The wilderness Lyra lived in was not the gentle foothills near the citadel. It was the high, brutal expanse of the northern range. The first year, Ilara was just a servant. She learned to forage, to track, to skin a rabbit and cure its hide. She learned which mosses stanched bleeding and which mushrooms brought a quick death. She grew hard. The soft, scentless omega of the citadel was scoured away by the relentless wind. Her body, once thin and frail, became whipcord tough. Her hands, once smooth, became calloused and scarred. Lyra was a merciless teacher. She would leave Ilara for days on her own, forcing her to find shelter and food. She would attack her without warning, testing her reflexes, beating her down with a quarterstaff until Ilara learned to anticipate, to dodge, to fight back. The goddess is not a gentle mother, Lyra would rasp, standing over a winded Ilara. She is the huntress. She is the balance. She is ice and fire. To hold her power, you must be a vessel of iron, not glass. Ilara still could not shift. The hollow place inside her remained. But it was no longer empty. It was humming, a faint silver vibration that warmed her blood. She began to feel things. She could feel the flow of water under the frozen earth. She could feel the heartbeat of a stag a mile away. She could look at the moon and feel its pull, a silent song that resonated in her very bones. Good, Lyra said one night as they shared a meal of grilled fish. You are listening, not with your ears, with yourself. In the 5th year, Lyra took her to the edge of the great ice fields. This is your final trial. You must cross the ice, alone. On the other side is the peak, the moon's heart. I cannot go with you. The guardian you saw, it protects the peak. It will let you pass, or it will tear you to pieces. That is up to you and the power you carry. And you? Ilara asked, a knot of fear in her stomach. Lyra had been her only companion for 5 years. I am old, Lyra said, placing a small carved moonstone amulet around Ilara's neck. My watch is over. Yours is beginning. She touched Ilara's cheek, her hand surprisingly gentle. Do not fear the power, Ilara. Fear not using it. Before Ilara could reply, Lyra turned and walked away, disappearing into the snow-laden pines. Ilara was alone. She crossed the ice. It took 3 days. The wind was a living thing, trying to peel her from the slick surface. She did not sleep. She did not rest. She just walked, her eyes on the jagged, dark peak that rose from the white. As she reached the far side, exhausted and hallucinating, the guardian wolf appeared. It was, as she remembered, massive and silent, its eyes like moons. It blocked her path. It lowered its head and growled, a sound like an avalanche. Elara did not run. She did not reach for the knife at her belt. She stood, her chest heaving, and met its gaze. I am here, she thought, pushing the concept from her mind with all her strength. I am Elara. I am of the blood. Let me pass. The wolf sniffed the air around her. It whined, a low, confused sound. She had no scent. She was a void. It growled again, uncertain. I am not your enemy, Elara said, her voice hoarse. The other is coming, the shadow. I am here to stop it. She took a step forward. The wolf lunged, not with its teeth, but with its massive head, butting her hard in the chest. Elara flew backward, landing on the ice. Her vision swam. The wolf stood over her, its hot breath on her face. It was testing her. Get up, Lyra's voice echoed in her memory. Be iron. Elara roared, a guttural, human sound of pure defiance. She surged up, not to attack, but to stand. She shoved her hands against the wolf's massive ruff. I will not be moved. At her touch, something happened. The silver hum inside her flared. A faint, white light, the color of her amulet, bloomed from her palms. It wasn't hot. It was cold, like starlight. The wolf reared back, yelping. It stared at her hands, then at her. It bowed its head, sinking to its belly in the snow, and nudged her hand, a clear gesture of submission. She had passed. She climbed the peak. It was a sheer cliff of black volcanic rock, but her tough, scarred hands found holds. Her muscles, honed by years of survival, propelled her upward. She climbed until her arms were jelly and her lungs burned, but she did not stop. She reached the summit just as the full moon, enormous and bright, cleared the horizon. The peak was a flat, circular plateau of obsidian glass which hummed with energy. In the center was a depression, a perfect bowl filled with snow. Elara knew what she had to do. She walked to the bowl and knelt, placing her hands on the rim. She closed her eyes. Celine, she whispered, I am here. I am your daughter. I am your vessel. If you will have me, then I am yours. She waited. Nothing. The wind whipped her hair. The cold began to seep into her. Doubt, her oldest enemy, crept in. Lyra was mad. She was just a scentless omega freezing to death on a mountain. He banished me. He called me nothing. Theron's face floated in her mind. The coldness of his eyes. The shame of her family. The death she had so narrowly escaped. A surge of rage, pure and clean, unlike any she had ever felt, rose in her. It was not a petty anger. It was the vast, cold fury of an abandoned goddess. You left me, she whispered, not to Theron, but to the goddess. You left us all. You let the shadow grow. You let your children suffer. She stood, her fists clenched. No more. She raised her face to the moon. I am here, she screamed, her voice tearing from her throat. I am Elara, and I will not be ignored. The moon answered. A beam of pure silver light, so bright it was liquid, lanced down from the sky. It struck her. It was not a gentle warmth. It was agony. It was a billion stars being born and dying in her veins. It was the cold of the void and the fire of a supernova. She screamed as the power poured into her, filling the hollow space, shattering the dams she didn't know she had. Her body convulsed. And then she shifted. But it was not a wolf. It was something more. She didn't fall to four paws. She grew. Her body elongated, her skin shimmering and reforming. Spectral white fur, not hair, but pure condensed light, erupted from her, clothing her in an armor of moonlight. Her hair turned the color of spun silver, lifting around her as if underwater. Her eyes were gone. In their place were two orbs of pure, glowing lunar light. She felt the world expand. She could see every peak in the mountain range, every tree in the forest. She could see the citadel, a tiny, fearful blot on the landscape. And she could see the darkness, the creeping rot of the Morrigan festering in the shadowed valleys. She was Ilara, but she was also Selene. She was mortal, but she was divine. She was, at last, whole. As the power settled, a vision flooded her mind. Not a memory, but a premonition. A dark fortress of ice and shadow. Her brother, Finn, no longer a boy, but a young warrior, his face taut with fear. He was in chains. The Morrigan surrounded him, and a figure, tall and cloaked in shadow, watched him. Malachor. He has him, she realized. He sensed the awakening. He took Finn to draw me out. The vision was a trap, she knew it. Lyra had warned her. Malachor wanted her. But Finn, he was the only one who had ever loved her for who she was. She looked down at her new, glowing hands. She felt the cosmic power thrumming within her. She was a goddess, but she was also a sister. She turned her gaze toward the citadel. "I'm coming," she whispered, and her voice was not one, but two, a harmony of mortal and divine. She leapt from the peak, and the air held her, slowing her descent as she ran down the sheer cliff face, a living comet of silver light. She moved with the speed of a hunting owl, a silent, silver blur against the snow. The 5-year journey from the citadel had taken her across half the kingdom. The return journey took 2 days. She did not need to eat or sleep. The power inside her was a self-sustaining star. As she ran, she saw the state of the land. It was sick. The trees were black and brittle. The rivers ran sluggishly. The few deer she saw were gaunt, their eyes wide with terror. The Morrigan had been here. Their shadow magic was poisoning the earth. She reached the foothills of the citadel as the second dusk fell. The great iron gates were scarred and dented. The walls were heavily patrolled, but the guards looked exhausted, their spirits as gray as their fur. She didn't bother with the gates. With a thought, she gathered the air beneath her and simply stepped up and over the 30-foot wall, landing as softly as a snowflake in the main courtyard. The guards yelled, spears leveled. What in the... She ignored them, walking toward the great hall. Her silver-white form glowed in the twilight, and the wolves fell back, their pack instincts screaming at them. She was not pack. She was not wolf. She was something other. They whimpered, their weapons falling from suddenly numb hands. She kicked open the doors to the great hall. They slammed against the stone walls with a crack like thunder. And there he was. Theron was bent over a map, arguing with Kyle, his beta. He looked older. The 5 years had carved lines of stress around his mouth and eyes. She turned her gaze. "To Qua," she whispered, and her voice was not one, but two, a harmony of mortal and divine. He was broader, harder, but the arrogance was gone, replaced by a desperate, weary authority. "I don't care what the elders say, Kyle," Theron was growling. "We will not sacrifice the eastern village. We will." "Theron." Her voice cut through the hall. It was not the thin, reedy voice he had banished. This voice was layered, resonant, carrying the cold echo of the stars. He froze. Kyle dropped the marker he was holding. Theron turned slowly. His silver eyes widened. His jaw went slack. He stared. He saw the glowing silver hair, the eyes of pure moonlight, the spectral aura of fur that rippled around her. But beneath the divine, he saw the face, the one that haunted his dreams, the one he had condemned to the ice. "Ilara?" he breathed. It was half a question, half a prayer. The mate bond, that faint thread he had ignored, exploded. It was no longer a thread. It was a white-hot cable lancing from his chest to hers, so powerful it made him stagger. He felt her, the ice, the rage, the loneliness, the impossible, terrifying power. "You," he whispered, clutching his chest. It was you, the prophecy." "You sent me to die," she stated. Her voice was calm, but the air in the hall dropped 10 degrees. I... He had no words. What could he say? I was afraid? I was a fool? He saw it all now, his catastrophic, prideful mistake. "Where is my brother?" she demanded. The question broke his stupor. "What?" "Finn, Malachor has him. He's bait. Where is he?" Theron and Kyle exchanged a horrified look. "The Shadowfang Citadel," Kyle supplied, his voice trembling. "Scouts reported a massive gathering of Morrigan there. We thought they were planning an assault, and Finn's patrol went missing 2 days ago." "It's a trap," Theron said, his mind racing. He looked at her, at the raw power radiating from her. "He wants you." "I know." "You can't go alone," he said, moving toward her, his hand out. "They'll overwhelm you. That much shadow." "You think you can stop me?" she asked, her voice laced with divine scorn. "No," Theron said, stopping. He lowered his hand. He looked her in the eyes, his own filled with a dawning, agonizing understanding. "I think I should go with you. Let me help. I have 100 warriors ready. We can fight." Ilara looked at him, the man who had broken her. His offer was unexpected, but she had not come for him. "I am not here for your warriors, Alpha King. I am here for my brother. Stay out of my way." She turned to leave. "Wait!" he yelled, his voice cracking with a desperation that shocked them both. "You don't know the Citadel. It's a maze. Malachor has defenses. You'll waste time Finn doesn't have. Please." He swallowed his pride, the act visibly costing him. "I was wrong. I was a blind, arrogant fool. I banished my mate. I banished you. Don't let me be the reason your brother dies too. Let me help you fix what I broke." She paused at the door, her back to him. The sincerity in his voice was raw. And he was right. She could feel Finn, a tiny spark of life in a sea of darkness, and he was fading. "Gather your warriors," she said without turning. "If you fall behind, I will not wait for you." She strode from the hall, leaving Theron to stare after her, his heart a war of shame, regret, and a terrifying, unwelcome spark of hope. The assault on the Shadowfang Citadel was a slaughter. Theron and his warriors, clad in black leather and steel, were a wedge of fury. But it was Ilara they followed. She was a whirlwind of silver light. She didn't fight with claws or teeth. Where she walked, the Morrigan, twisted, shadowy wolves with red, burning eyes, shrieked and dissolved. She would raise a hand, and beams of moonlight would lance out, turning them to ash. Theron fought at her side, his massive alpha form a blur of gray fur and snapping jaws. Kael on her other flank. They were guarding a goddess. "This way," Theron warned, diverting her from a dead end. He knew the layout. She followed him, a silent, glowing wraith. The bond between them was a physical presence, a torrent of information. She could feel his fear, his adrenaline, and beneath it, a profound, crushing guilt. He could feel her power, cold and vast, but also her singular, burning focus, Finn. They reached the central keep. The doors were black ice. Ilara placed her hand on them, and they cracked, then exploded into steam. The throne room was a cavern of shadow, and in the center, in a cage of black, corrupted energy, was Finn. He was pale, bleeding from a dozen cuts, but he was alive. "Ilara!" he cried, his voice weak. "I'm here, Finny," she said, and for a moment the goddess was gone, and she was just a sister. She moved toward him. "I wouldn't," a voice slithered from the shadows. A figure emerged, coalescing from the darkness near the throne. He was tall and gaunt, clad in armor that seemed woven from night itself. He was not a wolf, but something ancient and wrong. His face was handsome, but utterly devoid of light. Malachor. "So," Malachor said, his voice a dry rustle, "the little vessel is full. You have your mother's eyes, Selene." "Let him go," Ilara commanded, her voice resonating with power. "Oh, I will. But first, we must thank the one who made this all possible, the one who delivered you to your power so perfectly." Malachor smiled. "Isn't that right, Elder Vorlog?" A figure stepped out from behind the throne. A small, stooped wolf, his fur gray with age. Elder Vorlog, Thrawn's most trusted advisor. The one who had first interpreted the prophecy of the Nothing Wolf. Thrawn stopped dead. "Vorlog? What? No!" "Yes, my king," Vorlog said, his voice dripping with triumphant spite. "For decades I have served the true power. I whispered in your father's ear, and I whispered in yours. It was so easy. You alphas, so proud, so breakable. I guided your fear, Thrawn. I made you see ruin where there was salvation. I ensured she would be cast out, ensuring she would seek her power, all to draw her out for my master." The betrayal shattered Thrawn's focus. You did this! All those raids, the fear, my people!" "Sacrifices," Vorlag sneered, "for a new age of shadow! You, monster!" Theron lunged, his alpha form exploding in rage. "No!" Ilara cried. "It was a trap." Malachor laughed. He didn't even look at Theron. He raised a hand, and a tendril of pure shadow lashed out, not at Theron, but at Ilara. She was fast. She raised a shield of light, but Finn was faster. With a desperate cry, Finn, who had been working at his chains, broke free. He threw himself in front of his sister, his arms wide. The shadow tendril struck him. It was meant for a goddess. For a mortal, it was oblivion. Finn looked at Alara. His eyes were wide with shock. A dark, spider-webbing crack of shadow energy spread across his chest. "Lara!" he gasped. "No! No, Finn!" she shrieked. She caught him as he fell. The cage of energy dissolved. He was light in her arms. "Be the light, Alara," he whispered. His eyes, so full of love, went dull. He was gone. Time stopped. The hall was silent. Theron's roar of rage died in his throat. Alara knelt on the cold floor, holding the body of her brother, the only person in the world who had ever loved her unconditionally, the boy she had come to save. A sound built in the room, a low, soft, keening wail. It came from Alara. It was the sound of a heart breaking, but it was also the sound of a star collapsing. "No," she whispered. She laid Finn gently on the ground. She stood. The grief was so vast, so absolute, it was a physical force. It was the final catalyst. The silver light around her exploded. It wasn't a glow anymore. It was a column of blinding, white-hot divine fire that shot through the roof of the citadel and into the night sky. The very stones of the fortress began to crack and melt under the purity of her power. Her silver hair became a torrent of liquid light. Her form solidified. She was no longer a mortal woman cloaked in an aura. She was the aura. She was the moon goddess incarnate, and she was filled with a terrible, righteous wrath. "You!" Her voice was not a harmony anymore. It was a chorus of 1,000 voices, ancient and powerful. "You took him!" Malakor's smile faltered. This was more power than he had anticipated. The grief had unlocked everything. "Vorlag, you fool!" he snarled. Vorlag was already scrabbling away, his fur smoking. The light was agony to him. The Morrigan in the hall were simply ceasing to exist, dissolving into mist. I will unmake you," Malakor hissed, gathering his shadows. Ilara didn't answer. She raised her hand. She didn't summon a beam of light. She summoned the moon. A sphere of concentrated, searing moonlight appeared in her palm. "Run!" Malakor shrieked at Vorlag. He dissolved into shadow, punching a hole in reality and vanishing. Vorlag tried to follow, but he was too slow. Ilara closed her hand. Vorlag screamed. He didn't burn. He was unwritten. The light consumed him so completely that not even ash was left. The fortress was collapsing. The divine power was too much for the shadow-forged stone. Theron was staring, his wolf form gone, back on 2 legs. He was on his knees. It wasn't in supplication. It was in pure, terrifying, soul-shattering awe. He had banished this glory, this terror. He had sent this to die in the snow. Ilara turned to him. Her glowing eyes held no recognition, no anger, no anything. They were the eyes of the cosmos. She bent and gathered Finn's body in her arms. Cradling him, she walked from the collapsing throne room. She didn't look at Theron. She didn't look at Kale, who was huddled by the door, weeping. She simply walked out, a goddess of grief, carrying her mortal sacrifice. The walls of the Shadowfang citadel caved in behind her, burying the darkness in a tomb of its own making. She walked all the way back to the citadel, her silver light a beacon in the pre-dawn gloom. The pack was waiting.
They had seen the column of light.
They had felt the shift in the world. As she passed through the gates, the entire population, warriors, elders, omegas, pups, fell to their knees. They prostrated themselves, bowing their heads to the ground. They were not bowing to an alpha. They were worshipping a god. Theron and Kael limped in behind her, the last in a procession of the wounded. Theron's heart felt like it had been carved from his chest. He watched his people bow to the woman he had discarded. He wanted to join them. He wanted to press his face to the snow and beg for an oblivion that would end his shame. Ilara ignored them all. She walked to the center of the courtyard, to the small grove of sacred white birches reserved for the burial of alphas. With a gesture, the frozen ground softened. She knelt and placed Finn's body in the earth, arranging his limbs, smoothing his hair back from his cold face. She stayed there, kneeling, for a long time. The pack remained bowed, silent, terrified. Finally, she stood. The sun was beginning to rise, but its pale light was nothing compared to her own. She turned, and her divine, chilling gaze fell on the elders, the ones who had supported her banishment. "I am not here to be worshipped," her multi-layered voice stated. The sound made them flinch. "I am here to end the shadow your fear allowed to grow." She looked at the kingdom, at the sick land. "Malachor poisoned your borders. He corrupted the moonstones that protect this valley. I will relight them. But he is not gone. He will be waiting. He will bring all his power to bear to stop me." Theron, his arm bleeding from a gash he hadn't even noticed, finally found his voice. He pushed through the crowd, ignoring their gasps as he approached her. He stopped 10 feet away. He did not kneel. He stood, meeting her gaze, letting her see the utter desolation in his soul. "He died for me," Theron said, his voice raw. "Your brother. He died for you. But it was my sin that put him there." He took a deep, shuddering breath. "My pack is weakened. My land is sick. And I am a broken alpha. But we are yours. My life is yours. Command us. We are your army. Let my death be my atonement. Let us die for you, as he did." Ilara regarded him. The goddess within her saw a tool, an alpha, a warrior. But the woman beneath, the girl who had frozen in the snow, felt something else. A faint, painful flicker of the bond. He was still her mate, and he was offering her his life. "You will not die," she said, her voice a fraction softer, the cosmic echo fading slightly. "You will fight. Gather what warriors you have left. We march to the first moonstone on the eastern ridge. We march now." The battle at the eastern ridge was desperate. The moonstone was a great dark monolith, its light extinguished. Malachor was there, as she knew he would be. He had not come alone. A legion of Morrigan, far more than had been at the citadel, boiled up from the shadows. "You have shown your hand, little goddess." Malachor's voice boomed from the swirling darkness. "You are strong, but you are one. My shadows are legion." "Fight!" Theron roared, shifting into his massive gray wolf. He and Kael and the 50 remaining warriors formed a ring around Ilara as she approached the stone. The battle was a chaos of light and shadow. Ilara placed her hands on the monolith, pouring her divine energy into it. The stone began to hum, a faint silver light stirring within. But it was slow. It was drawing so much power from her. The goddess form flickered. "She is weakening!" Malachor shrieked. "Kill the Alpha! Break her focus!" A wave of the largest Morrigan, hulking, bear-sized monstrosities, crashed against the warrior's line. Kyle went down, his legs snapped. Warriors were being dragged into the dark. Theron was a whirlwind of fury, but for every one he tore apart, 3 more took its place. Malachor himself coalesced from the shadows, a blade of pure darkness in his hand. He bypassed the line, striking directly at Ilara's back. Theron saw it. He roared, a sound of pure denial. He leapt, twisting in midair, interposing his own body. The shadow blade plunged deep into his shoulder, a wound that would have ripped a normal wolf in 2. Theron crashed to the ground at Ilara's feet, his wolf form shrinking, reverting to his human shape. He was bleeding, not red blood, but black, sluggish shadow. The wound was poisoned. "Theron!" Her scream was human, all human. He looked up at her, his silver eyes dimming. The mate bond was screaming, a high-pitched keen of agony in her soul. "My goddess," he choked, reaching a bloody hand toward her. "My mate." The moonstone was half-lit, pulsing with power. Malachor was gathering for another strike. The warrior's line was about to break. She could finish the ritual. She could light the stone, banish the darkness, and save the kingdom. But Theron would die. The shadow poison was killing him in seconds. She was the goddess. She was the balance. She was the huntress. Her duty was to the world. She looked at his face, his stupid, arrogant, broken face. The face of the man who had banished her. The face of the man who had just taken a blade for her. "No," she whispered, "I will not lose anyone else." She ripped her hands from the moonstone. The ritual shattered. The burgeoning light died, though the stone remained partially charged, a weak beacon. Malachor roared in triumph, but it turned to a shriek as Ilara turned on him. The divine power didn't flow into the stone. It lashed out. "Be gone," she commanded. A wave of pure, silver-white force, driven by her rage and fear, slammed into the Morrigan army. It wasn't the controlled light of a goddess. It was the raw, emotional blast of a woman protecting her mate. The shadows were vaporized. Malachor himself was thrown back, his form scattering. He reformed in the distance, his shadow body ragged. He looked at her, at the Alpha dying at her feet, and he laughed, a dry, rasping sound. I see your weakness, little goddess. It is him. It is them. You have not won. You have only chosen. The shadows swallowed him, and he was gone. The remaining Morrigan fled, dissolving into the weak morning light. Ilara fell to her knees beside Theron. "No, no," she grabbed his hand. He was cold. The shadow poison was in his heart. "Ilara," he whispered, "am sorry. I am so sorry." "Don't," she wept, her divine form dissolving. The glowing hair faded to silver-streaked black. Her eyes were her own again, green and brown, swimming in tears. The spectral fur was gone. She was mortal. She was just Ilara. And she was drained. "Don't you dare leave me. You don't get to die, not after this." "It's cold." "No." She placed her hands on the black, gaping wound in his chest. The dregs of her power, the tiny bit of silver light she had left, pooled in her palms. It wasn't the vast, cold power of the goddess. It was her own, warm, mortal, and desperate. "You will not leave me," she commanded, not as a goddess, but as a mate. She pushed her light into him. It wasn't a healing, it was a trade. She poured her life force, her essence into him, pushing out the shadow. The black wound hissed and steamed. Theron convulsed.
She felt the poison enter her, a searing cold. But she held on, pushing her light deeper, until her own vision went black and she collapsed on top of him, unconscious. Kale, his leg shattered, crawled his way over to them. He stared. The Alpha King was breathing. The terrible wound was closing, leaving only a network of dark, lightning-like scars. And Elara, his queen, his goddess, was pale and still, breathing shallowly, her hand still clutched in his. Kale looked up at the weakly glowing moonstone, then at his two rulers, and for the first time in 5 years, he believed they might actually survive. Theron woke to the smell of herbs and the soft touch of fur. He was in his own chambers. Sunlight, clean and bright, streamed through the window. He was alive. He sat up, his body aching but whole.
The scarred, dark pattern on his chest was a stark reminder. He looked down. Elara was asleep in a chair beside his bed, her head resting on the mattress, her hand clutching his. She looked mortal. The silver streaks in her dark hair were the only sign of the power that had burned in her. She was pale, exhausted, but she was here. The bond was no longer a scream or a cable. It was a solid, warm, steady presence, a quiet song of belonging. He had felt her pour her life into him. He had felt her choice. She had chosen him over her duty, over her power. He gently squeezed her hand. Her eyes fluttered open, green and brown, just as he remembered, but now with a depth that held the memory of stars. She looked at him, and her first expression was relief. "You're awake," she whispered. You saved me," he said, his voice thick. "I'm a fool," she replied, sitting up, rubbing her face. "I broke the ritual. I'm not. I can feel her, the goddess, but she's distant, sleeping. I used almost all of it to heal you. You chose me," he said, the words heavy with awe. "I did." She wouldn't meet his eyes. "Finn is gone. Kale is healing. The stone is only half lit. Malachor will be back. I failed." "No," Theron said, reaching out, touching her cheek. She flinched, but didn't pull away. "You didn't fail. You made a choice. You chose us. You chose me. After everything I did, I don't understand." Finally, she looked at him. Her eyes were clear, the tears gone. "I don't either, Theron. When I was on that mountain, I was a goddess. I was fury and starlight. I would have let you die to save the world. But when I saw you fall, all I could see was my mate, the man I stupidly, foolishly still loved, the man who made me a pariah, the man who just saved my life." He had no words. He just looked at her, his heart, which he thought had died, painfully rebuilding itself. "I hate you," she whispered. "I hate you for banishing me, for your pride, for Finn." "I know," he choked out, "but—" She took his hand, the one that wasn't hers. I think I love you too, and I don't know what to do with that." "You don't have to do anything," he said, his voice soft. "Just stay. We'll figure it out. We'll fight him, together, you and me." They rebuilt the kingdom, seeing their king alive and their queen, their Elara, mortal but present, found a new strength. It wasn't the fearful worship of a goddess, it was the fierce loyalty to a queen who had chosen them. Elara, with the sleeping divine power inside her, and Theron, with his new, scarred humility, ruled together. He didn't kneel to her, he stood beside her. He listened, he learned. The threat was not gone. Malachor was out there. The land was still sick,
The other moonstones were still dark, but the citadel was no longer a place of fear. It was a place of hope. Months later, the first snow of winter began to fall. Elara and Theron stood on the high balcony, the very one from which she had been banished. The air was cold, but she was warm. Wrapped in a thick, gray wolf pelt cloak he had hunted and cured for her himself. He took her hand. It was calloused and strong, and it fit perfectly in his. "He'll be back with the spring," Theron said, his voice low. "I know." She leaned her head against his shoulder. His arm came around her, pulling her close. The gesture was so natural, so right, it almost made her ache. "We will be ready for him," he said. Elara looked out at the tundra, the vast, white expanse that had been her prison, her crucible, and her salvation. Then she looked up at the citadel, her home, her people. Theirs. Together, she agreed. The full moon broke through the heavy clouds, its light, pure and silver, shining down on them both. It was not the light of a distant, angry god. It was the light of a promise.